Hello and welcome to our second lesson of Key Question 4, Life During Wartime, of Depression, War and Recovery, 1930 to 1951. So last lesson we looked at bombing of British cities and how the people of Britain coped with that. And today we're going to be looking at the evacuees and their host communities in Wales. Okay, so again, evacuation. So why? Heavy bombing was expected in Britain's large industrial areas. And the government thought that children and mothers of young children would be safer if they were out of these places. Okay, so everywhere really in areas where there was lots of industry, the key strategic areas that they believed probably would be targeted by the Nazis with their bombardment needed to be evacuated out of those areas and into the countryside. They're evacuated from cities such as Coventry and Swansea to country areas including Pembrokeshire. So Wales, a lot of the evacuees came from sort of Swansea and the Cardiff areas, and they were evacuated to West Wales, up into North Wales, into Mid Wales, into the countrysides. Okay, lots of people from England as well evacuated into Wales, into the countryside. So the government used posters, leaflets, messages and the radio to persuade parents how important evacuation was, and they transported these children using buses and trains. So how did they cope with this experience? How did the evacuees themselves, as well as their host communities, cope with their experience of war? Okay, now remember, these evacuees were coming very far away from home to live with people that they'd never met before, and their experiences were very, very different. So we're going to have a read through this account now of an evacuee's experience. We're going to think about whether she had a positive or negative experience, and I want you, the PowerPoint is attached, I want you to download it and highlight any information that proves positive or negative. Okay, so I was evacuated in May 1940, aged 8. My sister Muriel, who was 15, came home from school with a note telling parents that children were to be evacuated from Swansea. She said she would not go. However, my parents said that I would be evacuated. Parents met at my school, and my father even took the day off work to come with us. I and the other children were being evacuated to Ustra Gunlice. Everyone was crying. When we got there, we were dropped off at the cinema, where adults were waiting to take us in. I was put with a family that owned a wallpaper shop, and my best friend was put next door with an old lady. However, the old lady could not cope, and my friend came to live with us. We lived above the wallpaper shop, and the toilet was at the bottom of the garden. It was just a shed with a pit and a bucket. I didn't want to be there, and sometimes I got the bus to Swansea on my own to see my parents. My mother had to bribe me to go back to Ustra Gunlice. My sister came to visit me once while I was there. Every day we went to the local school. We evacuees had lessons in the morning, the local children had lessons in the afternoon. If I'm honest, I hated it. I was so young and I just wanted to be at home with my parents. So that's one experience of an evacuee. That's Brenda Roberts. She was born in Swansea in 1931, so she was 9 years old when she went. In January 2017, she recalled her time. So she, again, have a think now about whether or not this is a positive or negative experience. Highlight anything that backs up what you think, okay? Bear in mind as well, this Brenda Roberts was evacuated to Ustra Gunlice from Swansea, which isn't really very far away. Lots and lots of evacuees actually had to travel really, really far. There were lots of evacuees from London that came actually to Wales as well. Okay, so some of them had travelled a long, long way from their parents. They couldn't just get the bus back to see them. So have a think about things like that as well. So that's one experience. Okay, the foster mother used to beat us with a leather belt, which she kept on a nail by the fireplace. Afterwards, my legs were bright red and stinging. I used to run to my bedroom where I hugged the collie dog. I remember that the children in the village didn't like us. Some children shouted, "Go back to London, we don't want you here." They held me down and put snails and frogs in my dress. So that's just some of the experiences. Okay, now that's not to say that every evacuee experienced this. Not every evacuee had an awful experience. Okay. So we need to be really, really aware of that. These are a couple of, 3 experiences that are bad. Not all of them are like this, okay? Photos like these often appeared in newspapers, sort of showing evacuees quite happy and trying to convince people really that it was a good thing to do. But again, not everybody had a terrible time as well. So let's have a little look at these. Source 1, a 13-year-old working class boy. There, source 2, a middle class boy. Source 3, an 11-year-old working class evacuee. Members of the Women's Institute, a young evacuee. Source 5, a middle class host, okay? I want you to have a look at these now, so download the PowerPoint, and I want you to tell me what it says about the evacuation experience and what you can work out about the evacuees' home life before they were there. Bear in mind that a lot of these evacuees had come from areas like London, and they'd come from terrible, terrible poverty. And actually, so to be evacuated to a nice house in the country was a massive luxury for them. A lot of them actually never went back to their homes. Okay, so have a look at that. Either draw this table out, download it, totally up to you, what it says about the evacuation experience and what you can work out from their home life before they were evacuated. So I'm going to suggest that you pause the video and get that done. And then I want you to have a little look at this exam question, okay? This is question 2 on the paper. It's worth 6 marks. And it's to what extent does the source accurately explain the experience of evacuees who were sent to Wales during the Second World War? Now, you need to use data to analyse this. Date, author, tone and audience, and analyse how accurate it actually is, okay? Now, first things first, it was in September 1940 that hundreds of Britain children from the Birmingham area assembled at the main station carrying luggage with a label attached to their clothing, giving their name and address. It was a very long and slow journey. I remember the train going up the Rhondda Valley, stopping at each station to allow evacuees to alight. The end of my train journey was Treorchy, and there were not many of us left by this time. I went to the Bound family at 11 Vicarage Terrace, and I can still see me now that first evening sitting in the armchair by the fire, a very quiet and shy 9-year-old with Floss the Spaniel sitting at my feet. Auntie Paul, Uncle Sam and Cliff made me very welcome, and I seem to remember having my favourite tinned fruit, which was a luxury at the time, for tea. The biggest problem was language. I could not understand a word that was said to me, and they could not understand me. And that's from the memories of a wartime evacuee for a television programme on evacuation in September 2000. So the things you need to be thinking about there is when it was created. Has she had a lot of time to think about it? Is there benefit of hindsight there? Is she going to remember it? She's recounting. Is she going to remember it all accurately? The author, she's experiencing it firsthand. But again, what's really important there is this is one person's opinion. And this is where you would bring your own knowledge in. That not every evacuee had a nice experience like this. And describe to me other experiences evacuees had. Okay. Again, the tone, is it biased? Is it negative? Is it positive? And who is this aimed at? It's for a television programme, so how is that going to affect how accurate it is? Okay, is it going to affect how accurate it is? Okay, and then we've got mark scheme here. So, detailed understanding of the key feature in the question. We're talking about detailed understanding of evacuees. You've got a lot of information there about evacuation. You know what you're talking about. And then 1 up to 4, analyses and evaluates the accuracy of the source set within the context of the historical event studies. This is your data. Strengths and limitations of the source are fully addressed. Okay, date, author, tone and audience. So have a go at that for me. And once you've completed it, give yourself a mark, and that would be the end of the lesson. Thank you very much.